MMA, or mixed martial arts, is one of those sports that doesn't have wrestling's pop factor, nor judo's prestige. And yet it's consistently one of the most dangerous sports in the world. And one thing that sets the game apart is the sheer amount of career-ending knockouts in its history. That's right, not round-ending or even match-ending, but entire career-shattering KOs that ruin careers. And so in this video, we'll be taking a look at 10 UFC knockouts that ended careers. As always, be sure to subscribe and ring the bell, and with that, let's start with no particular order. Rich Franklin. A former middleweight champion, Franklin was the de facto ruler of the 185-pound division. The guy's accomplishments were immense, having beaten a ton of big names and winning the UFC title with the TKO of one Evan Tanner in 2005. So how did the downfall happen? Well, as it turns out, one single right hand from Kung Lee in 2012 was all it took for Franklin to be done with his entire fighting career. In one literal knockout blow that made the rowdy crowd go silent until the now revered champ came back to consciousness, safe to say he never fought again professionally. 9. Michael Bisping. Single blows, although iconic, are not the only way people get KO'd permanently. Take, for instance, the middleweight champion Michael Bisping. Known as the Count, the start of the whole cycle started with a detached retina in his right eye caused by a head kick KO by Vitor Belfort back in 2013. Already, many were worried it was the end for him since eye injuries are shockingly bad for fighters. Duh. But Bisping wasn't ready to call it quits just yet and instead chose to fight without any permanent solution. Going on to fight Alan Belcher and others, he had a shockingly normal run until in his next fight with Mark Munoz when his eye had gotten so bad he couldn't even see his hand in front of his face and had to consider expensive surgery. And even that didn't fix his retina, as it got detached again, and finally during a follow-up surgery, a portion of his retina had to be permanently removed due to scar tissue. The now middleweight legend would never fully recover his vision, but remarkably continued his career and even won the 185-pound belt despite his permanently disfigured and damaged eye. Honestly, kinda metal. However, it was in 2017 with a KO from Kelvin Gastelum that rang his ending bell when his other eye started to show signs of damage too. He was diagnosed with vitriosis detachment, a potential precursor to a detached retina, which again was the OG injury, and after careful consideration, finally decided to enjoy his vision and call it quits. 8. Dada 5000. Although not the most professional or the highest winnings, bare-knuckle brawlers are some of the most popular and brutal MMA fighters out there. So are their injuries. Take, for instance, Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000 and their now iconic match at Bellator 149 in 2016, which was even then known as a hell of a time. Now, usually the fight would have been quite a spectacle, but this time something was up, both men just not being able to keep up. See, to prepare, Dada had lost more than 40 pounds, and losing it in such a fashion obviously did some damage. And wouldn't you know it, come second round, he started to suffer from kidney failure. And yet the fighter continued, and by the time of the third round, he'd reeled off balance away from Kimbo and eventually passed out, collapsing onto the mat. And while you may expect it to have been a hit, what actually happened was far more sad, and Dada had suffered a cardiac arrest. Luckily, he survived, waking up in a hospital after having been knocked out for several hours. Come checkup time, Dada had survived 2 heart attacks, renal failure, and severe dehydration, eventually retiring from the game entirely. 7. Brian Stann. Stann, like quite a few legends, was a former Marine, and it definitely showed. Part of it can be seen in his 4-3 run in the 185 pounds in which he decimated Chris Leben, Mike Masanzio, Jorge Santiago, and Alessio Sakharov. But he did have a hard time against Chael Sonnen, Michael Bisping, and the one who would be his lasting legacy, one Anderson Silva. Both known for their brutal fighting, they were pitted against each other in 2013. And although for a while the match went either way, in the end Silva's count for blows got higher, eventually ending the fight and Stan's career with his legendary right hand. And just like that, Anderson, axe murderer Silva, had claimed another victim. 6. Kung Lee. Several people have entered the game so late and yet managed to make such an impact as Lee. During his reign as a Strikeforce god, it gave us 8 phenomenal knockouts to replay over and over again. And although he'd been having a good streak as a UFC player, it was then in this series that his loss to Michael Bisping that ended his fighting career. Battering the rookie player, the Englishman left Lee a bloody mess in the cage, and shortly after this, Lee retired from the game. 5. Ronda Rousey. One of the most powerful women in the history of UFC, Ronda Rousey had the honor of being the Strikeforce and UFC Bantamweight champion. To defend her title of championship, Ronda fought contenders like Liz Carmouche, Miesha Tate, and some other fighters, and continuously won 6 games and protected her title. But all it took to topple that empire was one singular kick to the neck at the hands, or, well, feet of one Holly Holm. Having studied Ronda before fighting, Holm went straight for her weakness, and the kick didn't only leave the UFC champion unconscious, but also made her end up in isolation for a year and pretty much paralyzed her career. 4. B.J. Penn. A member of the Hall of Fame and a reigning champion of 2 separate weight classes, Penn's name needs no introduction. As a lightweight and welterweight champion, he destroyed people like Jens Pulver, Joe Stevenson, Sean Shirk, Kenny Florian, and Diego Sanchez. Now at the peak of his career, Penn was at prime age for retirement, but instead chose to continue fighting. As expected, stuff started to go south the moment he lost his title and the following rematch to Frankie Edgar. The veteran still chose to shoulder on and yet again took 2 severe beatings at the hands of Diaz and McDonald, then 3 more, with the third with Frankie Edgar in an especially brutal knockout. And the final nail in the coffin was a fight with no-name upstart Yair Rodriguez, which too ended bloodily, finally making the veteran quit after having fallen so short of his earlier years. 3. Chuck Liddell. One of the single most iconic and brutal fighters in UFC history, Chuck Liddell is a champion by any standard, defending his championship belt 4 times before being beaten for the first time. And although the subsequent years were comparatively rough, it was his match with Rashad Evans that led to his bloody demise. During the match, Evans landed a huge right hand that knocked the lightweight god immediately. The blow was so intense that the footage caused notable concern from onlookers as Liddell lay unconscious in the canvas. And although he did seemingly recover to fight again, he did end up losing every subsequent time, taking 3 more brutal beatings until retiring at last. 2. Randy Couture. At number 2, we have the winner of the UFC Gold in both the light heavyweight and heavyweight divisions. That's right, we're talking about none other than MMA legend Randy Couture. Known for his iconic moments like wrecking Tito Ortiz, winning the title of the heavyweight champion at the startling age of 46, Randy, just like our other fighters, was pretty much at the peak of his career. But one punch at the wrong spot was what weakened him. His fall from the top wasn't sudden, but it did end up doing the deed and having him leave the league. 1. Matt Hughes. Making his debut way back in 1999, Hughes is one of the sport's veterans and absolute masters, defending his well-earned and deserved belt a total of 6 excruciating times. And because of that legacy, no one expected what would come next at the hands of Josh Koscheck in 2001. In a legendary and brutal match, Koscheck overpowered the veteran and defeated him and his entire career before the 5-minute mark, battering him from the start and beating till he was knocked out cold. At the 4:59 mark of the very first round, the legend was kicked out of the game he helped popularize. Despite that, his legacy remained intact, making him one of the most revered players in the game's history. Well guys, that was our list. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, be sure to leave a like down below. With that, it's time to wrap up, and I'll see you guys next time.